A very, very warm welcome to Chaps Many Cultures, episode number 178. And today we are talking about, we've had a bit of a theme of expatriatism here this week, and we're going to build on that. We're going to talk about the specific best ways, some of the best ways to get the absolute best value out of your local guide. Let's call them a local guide when you're preparing and getting the lay of the land of wherever you're going to. So we've compiled some tips, and we've got a free guide. So stick around on how you can get that. Yes, indeed. Welcome. How are you, sir?
Welcome. Did you say that I needed guided? How dare you? Do you think I can't find my way? Welcome, everybody, to Chaps Many Cultures, the #1 daily show on the internet about the business of culture and the culture of business. And as such, also the business of doing business outside of your culture. That's what we've been talking about this week. So
absolutely. I don't know, just the internet. I mean, I want you to lead me to a show even on prime time that does what we do.
Yes, I think so. I'm still waiting for Conan O'Brien to call us.
Yeah, I kind of had a bit of a flashback to the Seinfeld episodes of the pilots and coming up with a show about nothing. I think we need to kind of build our pitch to a TV network of some sort. Anyway, we digress.
Seinfeld. Not sure what you're talking about. That must have been before I started watching television.
Yeah, well, might have been before. Maybe you came to the States. It was before I came to the States. I watched Seinfeld back in.
No, it's been. I know what Seinfeld is, but it aired such a long time ago. Back then I wasn't allowed. I was still so little, so you know.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. Well, look, watch TV more late at night. Reruns are perfect. Yes. So anyway, we are talking about just doing business is one thing outside of your country. But of course, you're not going to hang out at the office all day. You've got to actually have somewhere to live. You've got to have a society to exist in, just as you do in your home country. But of course, doesn't mean that that society you're living in looks, sounds, smells, acts, and interacts the way that you do so in your home country. So, of course, you need to probably do a little research, a little digging to see what it might be like, because in some cases it could be similar, in other cases it can be vitally different. And really, when it comes to certain aspects of what we're talking about today, that can have a real impact on your comfort and well-being. Wouldn't you say?
Comfort and well-being. I think that is a great point to start at, because I had a cultural training session earlier today in my early morning, in the participants' afternoon, because they already relocated. So in these days of pandemic times, there are a lot of these cultural training programs happen over multiple sessions, and ideally we begin those sessions before the expatriate leaves, so while they're still in one location before they actually move to a new location. And today was our last session, and the participant has now moved to that new location, and she shared with me her first impressions of that new location, and her first day was not pleasant, not a single bit of it, which I hated to hear that, and it's sorry. I was sorry that she had that kind of experience. And she had let's say, a critical incident with a local delivery person. You know how goods and things and widgets are being shipped to our doorstep nowadays, because we don't have the freedom and the ability to go into retail stores as much as we used to. So she had a little bit of a hiccup there that bothered her a little bit. So knowing how to handle the lay of the land on day one is sometimes critical for your well-being, for your supply. She needed something shipped to her from the company. And it will also make in this case, a first impression of what life will be like in that new location, right? So she came right there to be quarantined, as you can imagine right now. So having somebody to be that guy or to be that support system that you can turn to for stuff like that, stuff, nuts and bolts stuff of a relocation, that is critically important. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And we get to work with people culturally, so we can do this, as we say. It's we can do this virtually now, if we've been able to adapt to. But it is common for expats to have the support of a person that's on the ground, to be a local that knows the community they're in, that they're moving to, some of the neighborhoods, some of the infrastructure that they might have to navigate. So this is where we're, and we've done some of that work. I haven't done a lot of that work, but it is, I think, a vitally important part of that aspect. And we don't necessarily get to work with those people directly. They are kind of supplied by another vendor or something like that. But we know that as we're talking with the clients, we're giving them a little bit of a checklist to prime them for the right questions to ask, because in the busyness of getting and packing your bags and getting the kids all set and all this kind of thing, then perhaps we turn up where I can imagine a scenario of turning up to a person like that, couldn't we? And going, well, look, and they're asking you, okay, so tell me what you want to know. And you kind of draw a blank. You go, well, I don't really know. You're the expert, of course. But of course, that expert doesn't know your needs, your wants, your desires, your wishes. And so being able to investing that little bit of time in being aware of what questions to ask relevant to you is going to be really helpful. Yeah.
And I want to shout out my support to those local guides, however they are called, whatever their job titles are with different vendors. In our world, we often call them destination services agents or destination agents, relocation agents. There's multiple terms flying around depending on which vendor you're engaging with. And I've done this work many years ago. This is actually how I broke into this industry, because I was confronted with a company coming into a part of the world where I took up residence as a foreigner. And my experience as a foreigner living in that location qualified me to be a expert for those other new arrivals. So some would give it a little bit of a derogatory description, like you're doing babysitting for professional adults, or you're hand-holding somebody into a new location. Actually, I don't find anything wrong with these terms. I think exactly that is sometimes what is happening. Maybe you find the term babysitting a bit off-putting because it sounds like you as the expat, you can't handle yourself and you need somebody else, a responsible adult, to take care of you. And yet, even though you might find that is not how you see yourself, you will find yourself in a new location being like fish out of water. You will be happy to have somebody to guide you, maybe not to handhold you, but to hold your fin if you're fish out of water. That's the metaphor here.
Is that a Finding Nemo reference?
Kind of, right? Kind of. So I did a lot of that work. So I went to Social Security offices, to driving clerks, to banks to help them set up a bank account, to visit schools to help them with the enrollment process for their children, to take them around town and give them literally a lay of the land, because I sat them in my vehicle and said, okay, this is what you need to know about this town. This is where you shop. Oh, by the way, where are you from in the world? What are the specialty food items you care about? Well, maybe you're going to be a little bit out of luck here, but the best approximation to what it is you might crave in your times of frustration is that spot over there. And so you show, basically you give them a tour almost. That's what we did often. We basically became tour guides who said, this is a great place to be, and these are a few things that you should know about this place. And basically, we were where the rubber meets the road between the cultural training coaching and the actual application on site. And that is a critical step in any relocation, I think. It is where you apply what you learned from Brett and myself, where you take that into action and let it be shown to you by somebody who knows that specific location that you're moving to.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's a good metaphor, though, even though you might not perceive yourself as a fish out of water or a newborn baby, right? When you finally a lot of this experience of arriving in a new place, not even if it's not metaphorical, there is a logistical part of being like a newborn, because oftentimes you don't have, like example, the United States. You come here, you basically don't have a social security number, you don't have a credit record. You literally have just like you're coming out of the womb, and you don't have the regular kind of things that you're used to back in your home country, and you have to kind of know how to kind of establish yourself in those situations. So now there are a number of different topics, and as we alluded to in the opening, that there is a free resource we're going to give you a link to where you can go to. It's going to be our little kind of cheat sheet, our starter sheet to get you launched on thinking about the right questions to ask. And one thing would be getting around. Of course, what do you going from a place, for example, that might have a great infrastructure of public transport to a place that is fundamentally relying on cars? Does that impact how you navigate your surroundings? And of course, that's the answer to that. That's kind of a rhetorical question. Of course, the answer to that is yes. And so getting comfortable and changing your routine around the structure of the available transport is going to be very, very important. And also, let's take my country, for example. I turn up here in this country and we're driving on completely the other side of the road. Now that brings into aspects of rules of the road, the regulations, some of the things that you can do. Simple one, for example, here in the US, you're allowed to turn on a red light when you're going into a certain lane of traffic, unless the sign says you can't. In my country, it is the opposite. It is assumed that you can never go through a red light, no matter even if you are going into that stream of traffic, unless the sign says you can. These are small little things that cognitively, when we're in our own country, we just kind of maybe ignore. And so there's these little things that when you're starting your list of things, say, what are the important things? What may I do wrong? Now, you could probably talk your way out of a ticket that if you just kind of open up your mouth and tell people that you've just arrived in the country, or but why go through the hassle? I mean, I would say ask the questions, get informed. Yeah.
And depending on where in the world you go, you may need to have a certain licensing process, whether you will drive yourself in that new location. Does your driving license from your previous locality, does that still have validity in that new location? Will authorities accept that as proof that you're able to operate a motorized vehicle? Remains to be seen, and there might be new rules, new exemptions that are constantly changing depending on what type of country you're going to or what type of country you're coming from. Interestingly enough, I learned during providing this service that depending on where in the United States somebody is locating to in Europe, their driving license will or will not be accepted, or depending on which country in the world you're coming into the United States, and the specific state may or may not have a bilateral agreement with the country of origin, whether their license is mutually accepted or not. Things that, yes, you may be able to find yourself online. Now, let's face it, you got other things to worry about in your relocation. Do you want to get into the minutia of all these little details? That's what your local resource agent is for. And I found that this work has shifted. More like 15, 20 years ago, people came less prepared into a new location. Now with millennials and even Gen Zs being part of the expatriate population, their reliance on digital information has skyrocketed compared to boomers and Xers. So they all carry their little gadget, their smart gadget with them, and say, well, done that, known that, did my research, I think I know about this. And yet, knowing where the government agency is and what their office hours are doesn't necessarily mean you know how to operate in it and who to talk to and how to talk to them, and maybe what type of communicative approach to take with them to get the best results or to get the quickest in and out. That's where your local resource person will be your best friend, because they know who to talk to. Maybe they actually know the person because they've done that job before, and they come in and say, hey, got a new person from abroad, you know the drill, let's work this out quickly. I got all the things lined up here, let's do this, right? So this will save you tremendous amounts of time and nerves. Trust me, I've been there.
Absolutely. Well, they're touching on that, segueing into communicating, is of course we talk to people about what some of the different communication styles are culturally, between the country you're coming from and what your preferred style might be and what you'll encounter in your new country. But that also comes into play in the logistical part of communications. So internet systems, television, things like that. You might there might be a different way. How do you make phone calls? Important things. We'll get into safety later, but like, what is the local number for emergency services? These are, and how do you prepare yourself mentally? We'll get onto this in a little bit, but
right.
These and then systems for packages and mail and that kind of thing. It seems so ubiquitous here in this country, where we order something, it arrives the next day via a certain couple of companies, but those companies may not exist or may not be the preferred deliverer in your new country, or new location. So getting ready for that. Simple things like the UK, it was always a surprise for people that went to the UK to find that even for a television, you had to register for a television license, and for each TV. And there was a surveillance system in place that would come and park their vans out the front, and they could tell if you had a TV, an additional TV, and if you weren't paying the correct license, or you hadn't applied for that license, then you would cop a fine. So these are simple
not just in the UK. Yeah. Same thing in Germany. There is
Germany too, right?
Yeah, okay. there is. I think it's called the GEZ. I forget what the acronym stands for. They'll come to your door, and they will have counted the number of devices that access. And there's plenty of conversations domestically about, oh, is this fair, and how much should we pay, and is this nonsense? Again, the lady that I worked with earlier this morning, she told me about her negative experience on day 1, and then she gave me a positive experience on day 2. Today was her day 5, by the way. On day 2, she said, well, and I talked to the super or the maintenance person in our apartment complex. So she's got temporary housing right now for 4 weeks. And I asked her, well, have you been able to plug into the local media, right? Are you trying to pick up some of the local language by using television, radio while you're in quarantine? She said, no, I'm not ready for that yet. And my TV was such a lousy old piece of crap. And then she talked to the property management person, and she said, what a sweet soul. He came in on the second day and brought me a brand new TV screen, a smart TV. Now I can access my Netflix and my Amazon Prime. And now at least I'm not bored during my quarantine time. So yes, her communication skills that we practiced during our cultural training helped her to find a sweet soul who was helping her getting that technology logistics set up. Not always will it be that easy, right? So sometimes you'll have to do some heavier lifting to get that set up. Again, that's what your local resource person is for, to help you with.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, so we talk about safety and medical. Interesting that people that go to Australia are often asking about the dangers of the local animals, and I say, well, don't be afraid to get a sheet of easily identifiable spiders, right? And things that can hurt you, because the biggest ally for a doctor is a well-informed parent or caregiver that's able to identify the spider that you've been bitten by. That will go a long way to getting the right type of treatment, right? Now, in the US, one might argue that, well, you probably don't need to do that because in general, most of these animals are pretty harmless and they're not going to. But in Australia, this is a different situation. They're
maybe
much more
not where you live, my friend. Maybe not in cold Chicago. Down here in the South where I live, there are venomous spiders that will kick your butt.
Yeah.
Brown recluse, black widow, hard to spot, and they're quick to run away. So, so yes, I think no matter where in the world you go, you will encounter wildlife or nature that may affect your physical well-being, and you may have a condition that you predisposes you to maybe an allergic shock or any other type of negative response. So notifying your resource person about that and letting them know what your concerns are will help them to point you to the best answer, the best resource that you need for such situations.
And then, of course, that we talk about that first entry level to the system of the medical infrastructure, and that looks different in different countries. Right. The surprising part for some people in one part of the world is that you have a general practitioner or medical practitioner that is a family doctor style, and you go to them for everything, and then they refer to you to a specialist if they feel that they need to have something more specific looked at. In other countries, you bypass that general practitioner altogether. It's on you to actually do the research, kind of self-diagnose to a certain degree, that you've got a certain problem, go to a specialist and do that as the first part of the access to that healthcare. And then there's things about the review and awareness of the administration of the healthcare and the pitfalls that can befall somebody. I mean, and some of these are not just medical based, they're financially based. These can have a real impact and effect if you're not aware of the insurances you've got and things like that. So building a good level of information about what your coverage is, what your exposure is, and then going to your local resource person who obviously, as somebody who lives in the society, knows the best way, the fastest way to access. And then getting back to that number, it is oftentimes, I set up scenarios where we say, imagine that you're under stress, you've got a young child who's very, very sick or been bitten by something that you don't know, and they're struggling. Then at that time, our brain is kind of going into basic operational mode. And if you come from a country with this number in your head, 911 or 000, or you're going to the phone and you're finding yourself dialing this number so automatically and it's not working, and then realizing, well, hang on, I don't even know what the emergency number is. So, a simple thing like putting that big placard next to the phone and saying, emergency number is 911 or 000, whatever it is. Yeah.
Knowing where the healthcare facilities are, I think that was very helpful for me when I first came into a new location. Yes, you may know where the hospital is, and your map on your phone will tell you that. It doesn't necessarily tell you which of these hospitals maybe has the best pediatric department because you got little kids and you want to take them there, and it's maybe another 3 minutes to get to this rather than to that facility, right? That eventually will save you time. Or where's the closest dentist? Or where is the gynecologist that speaks maybe some of your native language, because you have a woman or women in your family who may not speak the local language as well as you do, and you want to provide them with a service that may be helpful because they speak a little bit of your native language. All of these things are really hard to find out online, or are very time consuming, and an experienced relocation service agent will know these things and they will point you in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely. And then, of course, one of our favorites, of course, is shopping. Now, I always want to know where I can get my Vegemite if, I'm not getting care packages from from home, but these are just things like specific foods, being aware of, maybe making a small checklist of what foods that you or maybe your children or other people in your family really, really love. And at that point, when you run out, are they available in your new country, new location? So you can compile a small list of these, and or you might be able to find from a local resource, ask them specifically, what would you suggest might be a great substitute? There are certain things that you can't buy here in the US that I would love to be able to buy, but there are substitutes, some of them to a certain varying degrees of success, of course. And so you want to kind of personal care items, a really good checklist of personal care items that you like. Are there any substitutes for those? These are, because this comes into very personal aspects of your life, but to the ability you're comfortable with sharing this with a local resource to make sure that you don't find yourself having to kind of spend all that invaluable time Googling places or walking up and down. How often do we work with people that say, look, I spend half of my time grocery shopping just wandering up and down the aisles, wondering where the hell everything is. It's or what's the name of it, or what's the, if you are somebody who likes ingredients. Somebody mentioned this the other day. A client of mine said, I'm somebody who really likes to look at ingredients because I work with a food company, and it's just a natural thing for me. Now, of course, I'm in this country and I don't even speak the language, and it's all in another language. So I'm kind of blind now. I don't know how to read the labels. That's a very important part. Yeah,
I found, and then this may be different in different locations, but in the cities that I served or that I've been connected to through the training and coaching work that I've been doing, I found that in many locations where there is a substantial number of expatriates coming in and out, there is a group of experienced local agents, and typically the good ones, I think, they cultivate a tribe around them, a tribe of expatriates that befriend them over the course of their assignment. And oftentimes with social media now, there are local social media groups that have developed. As a German living in Atlanta, I can attest to that. There is a group for German speakers in Atlanta on Facebook and as well on LinkedIn, and they're big. And somebody asked the question, hey, I'm looking for this type of, I don't know, special ground flour for this kind of bread that I'm baking. Anyone know where I can get this? And then the crowd cloud wisdom will then come up with an answer. But typically that is the nucleus of that are the relocation agents. They set up these groups. They become the nexus of information. And if you have somebody that will be your relocation agent, as I said earlier, they'll be your best friend. Maybe they'll even be your ongoing resource for the time that you stay there, whether your company is still paying them to do their work or not, but they will say, hey, here's the group, here's the tribe, here you get the information from those who've been down that path before you. You don't have to blaze your own new trail because others have gone there before you. Right? Yeah. So that's how I think social media has helped in that regard, that that information doesn't get lost. It is collected now and maintained in some of these online groups, forums.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all know that we love and trust the government because they're always there to help us. And but maybe in another country, it might seem that they may be less able to or willing to. So, but is that the truth? Is it just basically the rules and the infrastructure that exist in that country that they're not empowered to do so? So great. Again, another really good point. Very important to talk to a local person. You can just shortcut some of these intricacies. So when it comes to banking, government agencies and things like this, these are things that really impact your level of comfort and, of course, your adherence to the rules in some countries where rules are rules and never to be broken. So very, very important that just shortcutting that with a great local resource, whether it's kind of first initial landing or ongoing is really important. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, sure.
And finally, you also want to know what you do outside of work, right? So sure, you can find your activities that interest you by yourself, and yes, you are online literate now, we get it. Yet there is always those local little secret tips, right? Those secret knock activities that may not be published online or may not be findable the way you might think. So it always helps to know somebody where I can get this or that, right? Or where will that band play, or that team compete, or where's that theater production that I heard about but now I can't find it anymore. What do I do if I want to go to this public pool and I'm not sure if I talk to the right person? Or I mean, again, I'm going back to that very same lady that I worked with earlier today. She's moving, or her work is in a town in Europe where there is a public transport system that also offers citizens of that city access to these public wellness facilities like pools and saunas and a park area. So your pass, your little account card that allows you to hop on the train or the bus is also your entry ticket into the public pool. But unless a local agent tells you that, you won't find out, right? So I'm repeating myself. Talk to your local agent. They'll have the tips that won't be as readily available online, and they live there. They will definitely know better than anyone else.
Well, that's a very common thing here in the like Chicago area, where if you're a resident, you have certain additional access outside of the regular hours or the regular access to that maybe a tourist does. And so that is a little bit of a superpower if you have the ability to show a residency and an address, that you can get access to these. So, you know, and as both Christian and I think we're both the same in this. We love digging in, even as tourists, digging into what the locals do. So now you're actually a local. You get to do that with a little bit more maybe time on your hands. Of course, we're recording this in the time of a pandemic, and these are little things that possibly at the moment that don't look the same as what they would normally do in regular circumstances. But we still want to plan this. Obviously, we're not going to be in this forever, and you want to be able to get out and about and not be confined by your four walls in your home, and so that's important. And then, you know, grocery outside of that is kind of like restaurants. If you're having you want to go out for dates and things like that, what's the level of restaurant classes and things like that, and the expected prices? You know, what kind of stick shock are you expecting from your home country? And these are all wonderful things to just, again, asking a local resource that, you know, actually live their life in that community. This is, you may only get access to these people for a very, very short time.
Right.
And what we're trying to do here.
Or not.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's happening still. I mean, the relocations that I've been accompanying lately, there is still a local resource person doing their work. They simply do it in pandemic type restrictions. And guess what? Your local resource probably knows best what the current present day pandemic restrictions are. In some countries, those lockdown, unlocking, restriction, not restriction, all these regulations are sometimes changing on a dime, right? And they're often decided by local municipalities and not so much by a countrywide government agency, depending on where in the world you're going. So your local resource person, they will definitely know what today's status quo is around it and what you can do, what you can't do. And they will have much more immediate answer for you than any abstract recorded video can do, like we do, or your pre-prepared online guide that your company paid a service provider to produce a year and a half ago, right? So the most current information will come from somebody who's got boots on the ground.
Absolutely. So as we mentioned before, we have put together a short little checklist prompt for you to think about some of these questions. And can we throw up the link of that? I don't know. Did we put the link? Yes, I'm sure we've got the link somewhere.
I put it in the comment box. And,
oh, yeah, perfect. Yeah.
And here, if you want to write it down from your screen, this is how you can get a hold of it as well. There's a lot of lines and underscores, but I think it's easiest for you to click the link in the comment box, or if you're watching this on YouTube, there is also a link in the video description. You can just click on that as well. Either way, that will get you to our worksheet that is for you, complimentary, because we're nice guys, believe it or not. You may not think of us as nice guys, but here's proof that we are.
Just trust us. Ask a local resource. They'll tell you we're nice guys.
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, absolutely. Another one in the can, episode number 178. And tomorrow we're going to be back with an expert, a real expert. Well, not that we're not experts.
Just us, a real expert.
Another expert that has built a wonderful career from her experience of working around the world, and has developed a really great relationship and set of informational resources. And we're going to talk to her tomorrow, that, for just building another little bit of this pattern on the support of the globally mobile. That is the globally mobile. That's what we're calling them. Yes. Globally mobile in this world.
Check your channels that alert you to watch our program, because tomorrow's episode will be a bit sooner than today's. So you want to check your local channels, right? Make sure you are aware of it, and that it fits in your schedule. Or maybe you're just comfortable watching the replay, which is fine by us as well. Either way you come to us, we love you regardless. So thank you. This is another episode, Two Chaps, Many Cultures. We're out for today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.
See you guys.